Hello, and welcome to the 49th episode of the Veggies Abroad Travel Podcast. I'm your host and chief veggie pusher, Rebecca Gady-Sawicki. If you're new around here, Veggies Abroad is a travel company that believes exploration should be a force for good. And for us, that starts with being plant-powered. Every trip we design is guided by compassion for people, animals, and the planet. From custom trip planning and small group adventures to our blog packed with guides, tips, and inspiration. And of course, this podcast. We're here to make conscious travel easier. This show is all about shining a light on businesses, people, and ideas that make travel better, from vegan-friendly experiences to responsible tourism practices and community empowerment, because those are the things we need more of and the things worth supporting when we travel. So today, we're diving into a topic at the very heart of what Veggies Abroad stands for, using travel as a force for good. You even might have heard it in that slightly updated intro. When most of us plan a trip, it's easy to think only about the sights that we will see or the food we'll enjoy. But behind every destination are people and communities whose lives are directly impacted by our travels. That belief is our guiding star. It shapes every trip we plan, and it's something we're committed to tracking more closely and talking about more openly. Early next year, you'll see the first Veggies Abroad impact report in your inbox. I'll admit, as a small company, I wrestled with whether what we're doing feels like enough. But after many conversations with colleagues, I realized we have to start somewhere, and we have to share with you what matters to us, why it matters, and how it makes your travel experience richer too. Because here's the truth. Travel planned with purpose doesn't mean giving up something. It, in fact, means gaining more unique experiences that aren't cookie cutter, encounters off the beaten path, and conversations that will leave an impact. It's not about less. It's about what's more meaningful and things you'll remember for years to come. Which brings me to today's conversation, community tourism. At its core, community tourism is when locals actively participate in, own, and manage tourism experiences. This ensures that the dollars we spend as travelers actually stay in the destination, that locals help create the narrative of what travelers experience, and protection of the local environment and more. The result? Stronger, more resilient communities and richer, more meaningful trips for travelers through authentic cultural exchange and immersion. To dig deeper, I'm joined by Richard Bazán from Planeterra, an organization dedicated to strengthening community tourism projects around the world. With over a decade of experience connecting tourism with culture, identity, and sustainable development, Richard will help us unpack what community tourism really means, why it matters, and how each of us can be part of the solution when we travel. Let's get over to my conversation with Richard. Richard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. I think this is an important conversation to have, and it will be a good one for listeners. So to start, let's talk a little bit about you. You've had a very varied career in tourism, marketing, food, and more. So what drew you to want to focus on community tourism?
Oh, well, my career in community tourism started at the very first year of the university. I met a community that used to do trekkings with llamas and making the whole atmosphere in the central mountains of Peru. My background, a family comes from farm side, so I got in love with the idea and then made a lot of us. Part of my academic research focused on community tourism. Then I had the chance to work in that, and then I met Planeterra, and I was blessed enough to lead the projects and the programs of community tourism throughout the whole Americas with a marvelous team. So that is put in short from a personal side, then academic side, and now putting my skills and my team knowledge in this.
Yeah, it's always interesting for people sometimes when things from all different sides of their lives kind of come together and it just makes sense. I was talking to someone about voluntourism in our last episode, and although her career seemed really varied, there were so many aspects of it that interlinked with
Oh yeah.
this concept, and it just kind of brought it all together. So that's great.
Oh yes. Intersections are the way to see and to understand more of the complexity of we have what we have in front. Tourism has been for many years um, kind of a lone sector in which we deliver experiences, but we are understanding now that there are many parts in reality that need to be covered when a person travels, and that is what communities are a powerful opportunity to see what complexity is in reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads really nicely into introducing Planeterra. Can you share a little bit about the organization, the projects that you work on around the world?
Yeah, sure. Well, Planeterra is a leading nonprofit to that actually uses tourism or put tourism in the core to change people's lives. So we are working with more than 500 communities around 80 countries. Um, and now, after 20 years of war, a little bit more than 20 years of war, Planeterra has been positioned or has a position in which we are better known how to work responsible with the concept of community tourism, not community based, not community led, but community tourism, which puts people in the middle and in the center, and people who owns and runs and leads their experiences and mainly their enterprises. We call it community tourism enterprises. So the whole processes that Planeterra has been working on now has three main priorities or three main strategies. The first one is integration. What we do best is to integrate community tourism experiences out of community tourism enterprises into the travel market, into different itineraries. We work now with Iberostar, with Evanios, True Travel, G Touring, G Adventures, and a lot more. But the basis of it is the Global Community Tourism Network, in which we work with more than 500 communities. We provide mentoring support year by year. We provide a global fund in which they can get support financially in order to thrive and get to gain sustainability. But at the same time, we are leading from the community tourism sector a climate and biodiversity strategy, which is putting, you know, the things in order when you think about how community tourism can impact positively to climate and biodiversity or climate resilience and vice versa. So the whole thing, which is growing, we are by the end of this year about to be 30 people. Back at 10 years ago, we were just 10 people, and now we're growing because the interest of the industry, mainly from the big trouble partners, are seeing that community tourism is not only a tag, is not only a label. It is a way of understanding reality and a way of understanding sustainability in the travel industry.
And when you talk about the projects, you're talking about actual projects that you're supporting that tourists can take part in, but also projects that these activities and that the organization then supports, like providing educational resources to youth, providing access to training and things along those lines, right?
Yeah, it has what we at Planeterra call the ripple effect. When you do things right, when tourism is done right, economically speaking, people get more income. At the part of the vulnerability that we point is that they got more savings and the opportunity for better education, for better and intelligent investment in the community, in the people. But that is from the economical point of view. But there is a whole of a great qualitative effects that we are sitting in each territory, that we work with communities from 20 years ago, and we have seen the self-esteem, the change of attitude that is impacted not only by the people who initiated the business, but at the same time to the youth people. For instance, this year and next week, actually, we are celebrating together with G Adventures GX, which is a world class event. And for the first time in this world class event that celebrates community tourism, we are having a youth track, which is how we call it, but the youth representative of many in the world community tourism experiences. So they have the opportunity to see and to connect among other young people, and at the same time to represent and present their story of success out of their community tourism experiences and their communities.
That's really great. So when you work with a company like G Adventures, for example, what type of projects are you able to add to their itineraries, or what kind of activities, I guess maybe would be a better way to say it?
That's a great question because um, as tourism evolves, so does the type of experiences. We have five categories. We have accommodation, transportation, meals, handicrafts, cultural experiences. And if you double click each of the categories, you will find different types of providing the experience, like different types of meal when you prepare, when you go to the farm to table experiences. You got, for instance, in Mexico, we have um, a Jacksuna project. They bring the people and they teach how to cook the cochinita pibil, which is a traditional dish, and they not only see a very ancient way of preparing it, but at the same time to put together people in the table. I think most of the ideas about the products is that we get the chance now to see how people actually can live within a community in this fragmented society, having the opportunity to see families together, but not only families together with another family. That's a whole different experiences, and it's not only about the experience, it's the way they live, and they have the decision because ultimately they are the people that they have the decision to accept tourists or not, or to accept a contract with a travel partner. But when they accept it, they open their lives in a way that we can see a different reality. That's why I talk about in the first plate, about the complexity of realities, mainly in rural areas. And now we are having more experiences in urban areas about migrant people that can deliver a tour. We are having more, let's say, people, for instance, in favela experience in Rio de Janeiro, they gather different families, and each family has a representative, and each representative knows, for instance, capoeira or hippie hoppy music, dance. So I think many of the cultural heritage is mixed in a way that tourists can not only can satisfy a desire of traveling, but a very deep opportunity of learning a different way of life.
That's really fantastic. And I think that kind of sets us up really well for how is this different than from traditional tourism? For some travelers, they might be thinking, well, I don't know, I went to Cusco and I did X, Y, or Z. How is that not the same thing of what, you're talking about now?
I think the pace is lower. Um, the welcoming from a family or representatives of a family puts a very emotional side to the experience. There is a very big side of educational part of the experience. Most of the of community tourism experiences, at least how community tourism began in Latin America, for instance, started from a very cultural side. So we need to learn how for instance, ancient community cooks or paints or uh, do any things that it is traditional for and adapted to a tour itinerary, of course. But now the trend has evolved, and we are seeing more communities showing what is the relationship within the community and their nature, about not only, you know mystical traditions, but at the same time useful areas like cooking, like farming, like wearing different clothing. And I think for many years we have seen culture and nature separated, but when you got into a community, for many communities, nature has been the first culture. So it's a very rich mixture in which we understand not these things separated, but to understand that these things have been together always. And that is a reflection when a community shows part of their music or part of their dances. Many of them are talking about climate, many of them are talking about animals and their relationship, physically, emotionally, spiritually, with that. So I think that that has a great impact when tourism comes from mainly many of the northern side cities, big crowded cities, and they found in little details like silence or to have the opportunity to talk to an elder people about what it meant life before the nowadays. So it is a rich experience. So I think educational side, emotional side, and a spiritual side gets together in order to have a real good time when they get the chance to visit a community.
Yeah, it's definitely a more meaningful experience. And I think another big thing about it as well is that you're able to then keep more dollars in that destination and in this local community, make more of an impact in this, directly with these people. So often with so many activities, it is being run by a company that doesn't even live in this destination. Most of the money then goes back to that main holding company, but with this, it is kind of completely different and, really can be a genuine tool for creating powerful impact in communities. What other ripple effects have you seen through community tourism, by being able to center the focus in these communities and letting locals lead these activities?
Well, there's a lot more. One of that, if you see in the people, is about women. They have the opportunity to work within their communities and to have more time to take care of their families. Elder people, which voices are recognized and valued, and not only to put in the itinerary, but through the exercise of receiving tourists, many of the contents, cultural heritage contents, are recognized, are registered, and valued. Sometimes the decision is to tell to the tourists, sometimes the decision is to keep to their own, and that is so valid. Another good effect outside the economic, and as I was saying, the qualitative side of the effects is about the communities. Most of the communities are now in the map of development and promotion. You know, the elder way of making tourism was to have big hotels, and bring in a very all included type of tourism. But now, for instance, with a Barrister, with this huge brand of hotels and resorts, front beach resorts, um, we we're working in a model in which communities around the area bring their products into the hotel, but at the same time, these clients can have the opportunity not only to see traditional sites, but at the same time to meet people who were always the guardians of those sites. For instance, in Jacksuna, in Mexico, we have the beautiful experience to work with a community that guards an archaeological site older than Chichen Itza. And mainstream tourism didn't see that. But with a restaurant and World to Meet, we got the chance to identify this community and to invest the projects in there and to raise the awareness and to contribute to the better quality services for them. So now they are in the eyes of, I mean, this ripple effect is also um, or also brings to the table some decision makers, some policy makers. G Adventures and Planeterra has done a huge work in putting many areas and many communities in for years not very popular destinations. But once they see that tourists come because the private sector and Planeterra invest a lot of money in those projects, so then sometimes public sectors, non-profit sectors see, oh, okay, this is a huge potential and there is a great opportunity to make these things grow, make the destination bigger. That is also a territorial effect when we put a good project, when we identify the interest of a travel partner. The first thing, and one thing that is different, or what makes Planetora different to other ways of doing projects, has been that we put in the first place what the market wants, and after that we identified the communities that are located in those desired areas or provide those desired activities, and we do the projects based on the expectations of the market and the trends. Most of the projects in Latin America, for instance, started by vice versa. Most of the projects that I've seen, they build a kitchen, they build a lodge, community lodge, very beautiful projects. But when it comes to integration to the market, many of the projects failed, and that is the key model of Planeterra. We cannot let that happen, because otherwise we'll be doing what any other people or any other organization is doing, and that is not right. That is the core of the ripple effect.
Yeah, and I was reading your impact report, and for people listening, they might not have a sense of the level of impact that you guys have had. But in 2024, you supported over 30,000 people, which is incredible. That's almost a small city.
Yeah, but at the same time, those are huge indicators. Those are huge and very important KPIs. But there is more to do out there. There are more communities. Um, you know, Tourism can be a solution, but ultimately it is an option for communities. A very good option to provide to stream some income, but the impact is wider. We are now working in analyzing and putting together all the pieces when it comes to talk about effects and impacts in the community. It is not only about the economy side. It's important and it's the main thing that we work on. But there are many other impacts that we are identifying that can lead us to think, for instance, what's the future of community tourism in the world? What's the future in the Americas? Many of the community tourism enterprises have been led by, you know, people in that time, but now we got a new generation of people that want to continue the business, to want to improve the business. Some people, some young people, based on the incomes of tourism, had the opportunity to study, and now with the study and the experience gained, they come back to the community and put their knowledge and new skills at the service of community. So it is, I think, a very complex way of seeing the links and the relationship between families and within each family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really amazing when people come back to their community and they want to work there and support the next generation. That's really meaningful, and sets a new foundation for what people are able to achieve. From all of the projects that you've seen in your work and the people that you've met, can you share a story of a Planeterra project that you're especially proud of or you think is really meaningful that has had an impact in tourism?
Wow, there are plenty, but one that comes to my mind right now is a project in the Sacred Valley here in Cusco, in Peru. The testimonies behind were impactful for me, because women used to work in tourism industry years ago, um, but the way they've been employed by a private firm is that they would use their knowledge in igniting, in dyeing and some of the products, natural products, but in the service of a firm. So they made chuyos, they made some sweaters with their ancestral techniques, but they used to spend more than 8 hours to that firm outside their community, and most of that time, most of those women started to raise a family. So in order to have money, they need to get away from their communities, from their, you know, from that location, to spend hours, not necessarily to gaining fair income, and then come back and going back. That pretty similar as a city. I need money, so I need to travel and spend hours outside, and I'm using my ancestral knowledge, but at what cost? So that was the context. And when they started to see tourism as an opportunity, and when Planeterra arrived to support what they already created, they got more resources to be able to spend the time within their community, close to their families, using their knowledge, most of their knowledge, ancestral knowledge, but in their family, with their families, in their territories. So was not only about time, what is not about only about a fair price, a fair income, because actually they did, but it's something very emotional, as I can saw when I talked to my colleagues. because they were happier. They were they got some a better self-esteem in community self-esteem. My knowledge is recognized in a better price, in a better praise, and I have time to spend with my family in a gorgeous place. By the way, it is a very gorgeous place. So many of those elements compound together. I say what we are saying in Planeterra is community positive approach. It is not only about a community providing a services. It is a community that provides a service, but at the same time take advantage of that, in have better investments, have a different mindset. What I realized with, for instance, Urpis Yantakilka, this is the name of this community, is that when they face the opportunity to manage business relationship with a travel partner, with a tour operator, and when they receive tourists and interact with them, in that moment the mindset changes, and that is a huge win for them because they it provides a different set of abilities and skills that will not only be useful for tourism but for different fronts of a community: conservation, internal organization, let's say, many of the agenda, the territorial agenda that they have. That is the great power of tourism.
Hey there, fantastic listeners. Let's hit pause on this episode for a thrilling announcement: a golden ticket to Globe Trot with Veggies Abroad. Veggies Abroad isn't just your go-to for vegan guides and trip planning tips. It's your passport to extraordinary small group journeys, carefully crafted by the ultimate veggie pusher and your favorite podcast host, me, Rebecca Gady Sawicki. I've spent countless hours researching the best vegan hotels, food, and experiences, and now I'm bringing those experiences directly to you. Join me and my newfound veggie pals on escapades to exotic and exciting destinations around the world. Whether it's trekking through the Thai jungle to witness elephants in their natural habitat or exploring Iceland's famous ring road, our adventures are nothing short of spectacular. And guess what? Those aren't the only exciting trips awaiting you. So what are you waiting for? Cruise on over to veggiesabroad.com pronto. Well, how about after this episode is over to explore our dazzling lineup of tours and secure your spot today. Yeah, absolutely. And you also touch on, is supporting women, which they make up over half of the workforce in tourism, but often lead in lower paid jobs and don't have the same level of voices. So you then set them up to have a voice for their community, to support their community differently instead of having to spend so much time outside of it and, probably not getting paid as much and not being able to be active in the way and probably which they'd like to be.
Yes, they have a voice outside the community. They got let's say a new aura of leadership. That voice represents the reality of what happens in the community, and that voice can lead them. I know many women leaders that come from community tourism that participated in more than 30 in events in more than 30 countries, that have the opportunity to be in a university teaching students and professors what it's like to run a family business or you know a community business. We are learning more than from them than from us. But that is a very virtuous circle, because when it comes to managing a tourism business, we know as Planeterra, and with our community tourism development specialists, who are the people that are more in the field, are more most of the time in the field representing Planeterra. We bring a formula, of course, in which our travel partners wants to work on how they would like to work on how the experience they would like to have the experiences integrated into the itineraries. But the richness of interacting with a community is actually to understanding and seeing and putting in the middle what are their voices. And yes, women voices, youth voices are now teaching us more about the future of community tourism than what can we predict. I mean, we can put the dots, we can put the data, but at the end of the day is the community that teaches more about their, for instance, very very close relationship to trees that we can imagine.
So we've touched on this just a little bit with, talking about groups that maybe have been exploited in past tourism industries or past tourism activities. Um, how do you ensure that when you're developing these projects that you're strengthening these communities and not accidentally exploiting them? I think that's a careful balance, especially when you talk about, bringing in a new opportunity for people, wanting them to be able to showcase their skills in ways in which that they feel proud of, and not in a way in which they feel like they have to because they have to earn money.
Yes, that is a very important piece of decision. We know what the market wants because what the tourist wants, and that is something that will evolve during the years. And we are increasing the numbers of experiences, and we want to have, for instance, with G Adventures, 300 community tourism projects in 2030. Um, that's a lot, yes, and we're very proud to be, gaining, let's say, success in that process. But ultimately, as I said, is the community that decides if they want to work with tourism, and you will find in there different situations. Community that didn't have experience at all and want to explore and want to thrive in tourism, and with our support, they can make it. But there are communities that are already working in tourism and they don't want more tourists, and that's fine. They don't want another travel partner because what they have now, it's perfect. But in the middle of those situations, there are different levels in which communities would like to have a specific type of tourists. They want to work in a specific type of niche of the market, different situations. What we do is to understand that necessity. We don't, or what we do actually is we are a field organization. So we travel, we visit, we call, we email, in any way of channeling the communication. We understand the perspective of the community. So the perspective builds a model, and that model is what we integrate. Many of our communities don't sell the same. They have different ways of organizing. I mean, in their own communities, different stories of lives. That the best we can do is to part from there, and once we got their approval or the positive decision in improving or start working in tourism, then we use our different resources. And one of the main resources that we got is the Global Community Tourism Network, in which we provide mentoring, continuous mentoring, but we provide them the opportunity to access our learning hub, which has more than 30 topics about how to build a business, how to communicate your experience, and different other topics. This is a place in which we're growing. We are adding more topics, we're adding more downloadable tools in which, by a quick and easy way of teaching and learning, they can access to those condensed, out of 20 years of experiences, what a business should look like. How can they manage, I told you, 5 categories of experiences, in which category you are, so you can learn from different cases. You can learn from experts in the field some tips and details and minor details that they can support their idea, because ultimately they are the ones who are running the business. Their style, the way of receiving, the way of performing is ultimately the best way of an experience. Is when a community, when a host express themselves. So we cannot go to that, because that will be managing and making that artificial. We provide what they need to know in order to thrive in the business, but the main part is they put the main part, which is the self expressions, and the self and the autonomous story.
Yeah, I think that's a huge difference when the people who live there lead the conversation, are part of the conversation, that changes everything. We can point to examples around the world of many places where the community isn't part of the conversation. And now the community is fighting back against too many tourists, not having proper housing, and just being, pissed. And rightfully so. If I lived in some of these places, I'd be really mad too that nobody consulted anybody who lived here how things should run. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I think it reflects a time in which society needs to understand that many of the business models have had hard, or let's say problems, mistakes. Um, we kind of forget what is obvious, and what is obvious is the people who were living there for years, or not only living in one place. Because one of the great misunderstanding is, for instance, when we talk about indigenous communities, when we label a community with indigenous, we put the people in one place, but those people have the right to be in any other places, having different roles in society. But what they represent, as I was discussing with a colleague, is, for instance, in Latin America, we are blessed to see how the world looked like 100 years ago, in a way, not necessarily doing an ethnographic study. We just can see it in the food heritage. We can see it in music heritage. We can see it sometimes in the street, and sometimes in tourism experiences. There is not too much of making up, or trying to represent an idea of the past. It is a living culture. And that is something very important, because much of that is teaching how to correct those mistakes in the industry, not only tourism, and I mean in general. And now sustainability has a different layer. It is not only about those three aspects. It goes beyond. For instance, within our network, when we talk with the Mapuche communities out of Chile, they have a very, very interesting understanding sustainability when they put spirituality in the first place. But a lot of learnings. But we are talking, I think, worldwide the same message, but with different voices, as you said, with different types of understanding reality. And for me personally, for my colleagues in my team, um, I think that is what makes working in community tourism very passionate about, because we got a very great opportunity to see part of that reality, to see part of those relationships, those social capitals in a community, and to be able to put our knowledge and resources as Planeterra to preserve that part of their knowledge, nature, and culture at the service, to the community through tourism. That is a great fit. That is why Planeterra is getting bigger, and many of the of professionals are seeing now Planeterra as a very good place to work, not only to learn, but mostly to put their knowledge at the service of the industry. And that is what we discuss at the same time. We have seen most of the heritage, cultural, natural heritage of the community at the service of tourism, but it's been always vice versa. Tourism is at the service to that. So that changes everything, and that is leading our way to see beyond 2030.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really beautiful place to be, especially in a world that's fraught with so much challenge right now. To be able to be in a spot where you actually can see the change happening in front of you, that has to feel really nice day in and day out. So, for travelers who really want to make sure that their money truly benefits the local people, what are some things that they should look for when they're looking at activities or before they book? Are there red flags of activities that might not be community led or could be exploitative?
I think that is a huge responsibility on the travel partner. We are very careful who we partner with, um, because sometimes enterprises say that they are doing responsible things, but at the core they're not doing. And I won't name that. I won't go in deep with that. But the partners that we have partnered with, they not only want to grow sustainability in their KPIs, but they want to have a change in the model. And I think the model, Planeterra's model, has been built in a way that we can guarantee not only sustainability and profitability for the travel partner, but those ripple effects that we have been discussing with the community. So it is a very balanced model. But when tourists need to find an experiences like for Urpes de Antequilca, favela experience in Brazil, let's say Mi Cafecito tour in Costa Rica, well, they have two options: to book directly, and for that, we teach communities how they can communicate in a better way, how, for instance, their income impacts the community. But when it comes to booking, for instance, through DMC or travel or tour operator, um, what they need to see is how they include those communities into the itineraries. Are they just part of a small part of the itinerary, or in a way they present on, or they make the wording, how do they manage that relationship with the community? Is just a provider, or is it a core part of their communications or their business? For example, G Adventures, in their itinerary, when you want to book a tour, they will highlight the community tourism experiences as G for Good Moment, and they carefully develop with us marketing information that is not only engaging to the tourists, but at the same time reflects what the community, what is their relationship with the community. It is not only about a supplier; it is a partner, a long-term partner, and it is a, for instance, for G, what we've been working for that last 2 years is, you will have many tour operators in the world, but not many has, for instance, with G Adventures, the list of more than 100 community tourism experiences active in their tour itineraries. So I think a very good piece of, let's say, perception or support the perception of travelers is how they can find the content in the booking place, or in the travel or tour operator website, or and directly how the community can reflect that those incomes are actually put in a benefit to the community. And they will say it, or most of the of those, let's say, engaging pieces of communication that the tourist can find is, for instance, what projects a community the community is growing thanks to the income, economical income to the society, to the, within a community. Not the whole community works in tourism. Sometimes, and this is a very constant, just part of the community works in tourism, let's say in an association, a cooperative. But what they can do is to, based on the income and the profitability of tourism, they have an impact on the society, which is part of the community, but it is not working to community. And you will find there education, improvement of roads, improvement of local schools, of local, medical posts, different areas. And I think those are pieces of information that we are teaching a community how they can how they can say this. But the travel industry, they have a very powerful marketing specialist that can reflect that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you ever suggest, if a traveler is unsure about something, to email and ask, how has this been developed? Do you support, different activities in your local community,
Yeah,
and things along those lines?
yeah, for sure. I think the w- what travelers do, not only through booking but when visiting the communities, supports the growing of the model, the reinforcement of the model. Some travelers, that have the chance to visit a community, not only donate through Planeterra, but provide suggestions through their, for instance, G Adventures or Chief Experiences Officers, like the guys of the CEOs. Those inputs are channeled through G Adventures to Planeterra. So ultimately, we are the ones to collect that information and to improve our own processes in order to teach and to mentor the community in a better way. So definitely, I think when just like when internet started to grow, we understand that 2.0 websites because of interactions with people. Definitely, when it comes to community, the input and suggestions of each tourist is very valued.
And all of the Planeterra activities, they're only bookable if it's through a partner that you're working with, like G Adventures or some of the other tour operators. Okay. That is
Yes,
good to know.
yes, and that is the main piece of the model that we have, because sustainability, I mean economic sustainability, comes from those big travel partners that can have the power to invest not only in the projects but in different fronts. For instance, in tree growing projects, climate and biodiversity projects. um, Ultimately, what Planeterra does is we can have a responsible use of that funding, not only to raise those projects, but to bring quality of those experiences into the itinerary. So it's a cycle. We gather money, their funds. We do what we know best, and we bring back those experiences to high, or to, let's say, to improve their itineraries and to put a different color, which is community tourism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point too, the sustainability part of it, because if these organizations they have an activity and they're just trying to attract travelers one by one, that's long term. The sustainability of that is so much harder than if they partner with a larger tour operator that has a set schedule every year. They know that 5 tours a week come from this partner, and that's, over 100 a year. That's a whole lot easier to be able to forecast. Okay, so I'm going to be able to take care of my family pretty consistently month over month. Whereas if you are doing this on your own and you have to constantly keep having to promote your activities, get people in your door, that's,
Uh, well, but
I, so
you know,
hard.
our community partners not only work with I mean, with Planeterra, they also work with different other organizations. What Planeterra can assure is a sustainable income of tours of groups through a year. But they have the right to sell their products as they wish, and what we are starting to teaching them is to understanding the trends and the different segment of travelers, so they can also have this other arm in which they can learn and to target direct clients.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fabulous. So, looking ahead, where do you see the most exciting opportunities for community tourism to grow?
Well, I think within the model, within what we know now, we want more people, more travelers experiencing community tourism. We want more direct income to the families, to the people who are uh, managing and providing these experiences. That is what we want. People doing it, more people getting employed in the tourism industry or within their communities through tourism, and we want that income to go directly to them. So, having said that, I think the industry itself is starting to see Planeterra not only as a short term partner, but a long term partner in which we can join the industry to change their mindset, in which community tourism experiences and community tourism enterprises, they're not only a part of the story, they are a partner for you as well. That will teach your team how to do better things, fair things, and at the same time improving your catalog of experiences, connecting better with different types of interests of out of those tourists that they got. So I think the impact the Planetary is doing with the industry, the big sharks, let's say that way, it's profoundly, um, or it will have a profound change within the next years. With the communities, we have a differential value in the industry And that value is that we mentor them throughout the years. We never lose contact to any of the projects that we have. And that implies that we will be able to see how those business models will change in the future. And part of that change is absorbing and open their businesses to more, let's say, climate and biodiversity resilience, nature positive solutions, a community positive approach. I think the expansion of the business, many of the community tourism experiences will expand in a way that they can, diversify their businesses. And I think Planeterra is pushing that growth, that responsible growth, that positive growth for the industry and for those communities.
And as we wrap up, what's one thing you wish every traveler understood about the power of their tourism dollar?
Yeah, I think I mean that will be very personal perspective, but the dollar that I would spend in a community is a money well used. And even $1 can change the life of the son of the, let's say, your host, or will increase their savings, or we will bring the opportunity to see a better future instead of a dark future in which I don't have opportunities. Of course, every dollar counts to build collectively a more, let's say, positive future in which I can have hope. And that is, I think, a powerful meaning to each of the dollar that a tourist can bring.
Absolutely. I think it's much more meaningful when you're able to connect that dollar to an actual person, that you've affected their lives, you've affected the lives of the place that they live. Then it's not so much about the activity, it's about the people. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a great conversation, and I really appreciate your perspective and time.
Thank you for the invitation and for bringing the opportunity to tell a little bit more of what Planeterra team, the whole team does.
Absolutely. You're always welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. If you'd also like to learn more about upcoming Veggies Abroad tours or get additional travel help, visit veggiesabroad.com and also join our newsletter. It's the best way to stay up to date with loads of new content, like where to find gorgeous vegan hotels, what to eat in cities around the world, trip planning tips, and so much more. Well, that's all I've got for now. Until next time.